Yeah, well, you know, it's been a while. I think it was interesting is that we've been talking about potentially having a talk like this for a while, like since when you and I were like in New York, and then also we were on your tour talking about it, and we didn't really
Yeah,
know where it would happen, but
yeah.
it's weird that we're doing it now under these conditions. It's a strange
Well,
thing.
now's great because now's a rare time that there's free time for people to actually do things that they want to do that aren't so, on a schedule, which is nice.
Mm. Yeah, and I've got, you know what? I was debating whether or not I was going to say this, but I'm going to say this because this is something that I still to this day makes me laugh inside and weirds me out. And that was like when it was, I think it was about 2 years ago, maybe three. We're in New York. You and I went to, I think we met backstage at Derek Delgadio's show, and
Hmm.
I was due to have a flight home. And I said, "Oh right, I'm going to go and get a cab home." And then you said, "No, I'll give you a lift." And I said, "Okay." And we went outside, and I thought you had a car, and you didn't have a car.
No,
You had a
no way.
motorbike. And I said,
Yeah.
"Oh, sorry, no, Dave. Dave, I've got like a big Samsonite suitcase, and I've got a backpack, so I'll get a cab." And you went, "No, it's okay. Jump on the back of the bike." And then I said, "That won't work." And you went, "No, it will." And I thought, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll humor you. I'll get on the bike. And then when we try to lift it up, you'll realize that there's obviously no room. And then I'll have to get a cab. So I got on the back, sat there with my backpack on. I picked up my Samsonite case and I went, "See?" And you went, "No problem." And just burnt off. And we're now driving through New York, me holding my case like this. You see those pictures in like Russia where people have piled a car like that.
Yeah, and by the way, there's your example. You go through India or Africa and you'll see people on motorcycles with their whole 7 family members. So
Right.
there is potential. I mean, I don't recommend it, of course, and it's not legal, but 2 people with a suitcase you can do.
I was just like burning through New York with my balls pushed into your back going, "This is the strangest experience of my life."
Well,
I think Ashley has a picture of that, by the way. I think
probably.
Anyway, enough of that. But yeah, so I can't probably. We should probably talk about something straight out the bat, which is that your Street Magic Special 1997 unquestionably broke the mold, I think, for magic shows and became the model going forward. Obviously, it's something you've talked about before, but I mean, it's worth mentioning. It's affected everything.
Well, I just, yeah, it's funny to see. Things on YouTube that I really loved. He did this thing with he was like making weed disappear and stuff, but it was such a clever concept. So I like when I see something that's new and different. I mean, it's always exciting.
Yeah, but it's like so I lost you for a second there. It kind of paused for a bit, but that really has become the mold, and yet that show is 23 years old.
Yeah, so it's time for something new.
It's just 23 years old, but it's still one of my favorite shows, and I think favorite shows of many. It has an authenticity about it which is difficult to ignore.
It's funny because if I was to do that now with the knowledge I have now back then, I would never do the show. So I'd be like, the magic's too basic. You can't put that out, but in retrospect, that's probably why it worked, was just the simplicity. It was just very base and very simple, which is ironically now that's all that people want on, not just in magic, I mean in entertainment. It's like the short, simple, the hit and then out, the hit, then out. It's almost like watching a good boxing match, it's like hit, next, hit, next. It's not talking, it's not patter, it's just straight to the punch. And it's even more so now, the level that you can't even comprehend.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and also I think like the fact that you did that then, you can kind of look back at it now. In that time period, not only a lot of your ideas might have changed or evolved as they will anyway in life, but also you spent a huge amount of time studying, so many different types of magicians and performers. I mean,
that's true.
Like who are your favorite kind of guys that you've studied?
Like in magic, you mean, or in all fields?
Well, performance, magic, it's up to you, really, both.
So magicians that are performers, that you know, there's the obvious. There's Harry Houdini,
Mm.
Chan Canasta, who was just, he took risks. You know, it's not dangerous risks like Houdini, but risks. Obviously, Ricky Jay, you know, one of the masters who you knew very well. But the magician that made me cry when I was 17, Tom Mollica, just
Yeah.
doing cards across. I was crying and laughing. I was so. Then Haji Ali, when I saw his thing, you know, at the Museum of Broadcasting, that was like, what the hell? Obviously, Juan Tamariz,
Yep.
Jan Frisch, Stevie Starr, Danny Ortiz. And then the guy that inspires me the most to this day, live on stage. And when I watch him, I'm like in tears every time, laughing and crying, is definitely Aussie.
Right.
You know? Every time I see Aussie, he can't focus on his show when I'm there because I'm laughing so hard that like he has to not react, you know.
Yeah, because he has a spot, like, essentially a spot midway in your last touring, in the show. He had
He got me to not do the bullet catch any further. He said, if you do the bullet catch, I'm not going to be involved in your live show. And even though I was like, this is the craziest live stunt ever, I listened to what he said. And then magicians I love that are like the behind the scene guys, or people that inspire me in other ways, are just great technicians. Like you obviously showed me things. And like when I saw you do the ring thing, it was one of my favorite things that I've seen, which I put right into my stage show. I didn't put it right in. It took me a long time. I was like 17. I met Kalush and Weber, and both of those guys just destroyed my brain. Kalush changed my whole thinking on magic in many ways, just as far as, you know, just trying to work something until it's just so flawless. There was a guy named Harvey Cohen that his whole attitude was he just messed with people. So he acted like he couldn't see, like he was dropping cards on the table, and he was an older guy, so he acted fumbly. But meanwhile, he'd already loaded 2 aces in 2 different people's pockets. So when he would do like the gambler versus magician versus Harry Lorraine thing, he'd make the cards disappear, and suddenly the deck that was all fumbly and in his hand he could barely hold, and they felt bad for him, hoping he would succeed with the trick. Suddenly the cards in your pockets and her pocket, and everybody's going nuts. And then, you know, Steve Schiffo, Malone, Williamson. There's just so many. Doug McKenzie, Garcia, who's helped me since, you know, a long time. And then the master behind the scene, you know, Mark Kirstein, who's just whiz extraordinary, you know. And then Peter Clifford, Paul Keeve. It's like you can keep going, you know. It doesn't stop. I have a guy, George Haig, that I know since, and he won't share, he doesn't show too much, but he's just a monster. Just the stuff that he does, I sit there and I'm like, what the hell did you just fucking do, man? It's, you know. So, you know, and then there's just, so you can keep going forever on this topic. So I'm probably forgetting a million people, but you know, and obviously guys like Mackenzie, who just comes to you with these things that are just so technologically impossible, you know.
But I mean, I always look at, I mean, what is a good thing is that you've always had a good ability to curate, I think, and take the right things out from the right people, talk to the right people. But I've always felt, looking at your stuff, that Kalush might have had one of the biggest influences, because it seems like, especially from his knowledge of historical stuff, it seems to...
It's great. He has such a huge knowledge, yeah, and he's very happy to share his knowledge with people that he thinks are going to work hard. So he, in the early days when I was doing stuff, I was doing, you know, pretty advanced stuff, and you know, I would go to magic conventions and stuff and really do the technical things. But what I would notice is when you go perform for lay people, they don't care about double put downs. You know what I mean? They want like bite the quarter, read my mind. So.
But he definitely, I think, probably, like, especially with the stunts and the endurance stuff, there seems to be a real authenticity that backs up not only your mindset, but something in the background, the texture of where it's coming from. And it seems to also speak of an old school tradition of that certain type of performer brought into the modern world. So I can only imagine that, like, you and Kalush working very closely together on like the history and the authenticity of those performers, that must have had a big influence.
Yeah. We spent a lot of time just hashing, brainstorming, talking magic. So, you know, I got addicted to it at the age of 5, found Houdini at the age of 6. And then, you know, the stuff that always drew me was never like the big illusions, because I didn't come from that world of having money to like buy and build things.
Yeah.
So I came more from like, you have a deck of cards, you have some coins, and you have your body, you know, so what stuff can you do with that?
And your mother was a major influence in terms of giving you that self-belief and like really kind of like pushing you
Yeah.
forward into something that otherwise was quite a new and scary thing, right?
Yeah, no, that's all you need is somebody that just, you know, that's all I needed. Somebody just gave me unrequited confidence and love. You know, it was nonstop. She passed away before I succeeded, obviously, but it was like I didn't need, you know how a lot of people want their parents to get, but I didn't need her to see, because she already saw, like she already knew. So there's nothing I could do to make her happier than her just be, you know, everything I did to her was like, that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Mine was always, get out of here. No, I'm really joking. If you're watching, Mum, that's not true. That's not true. But that's, I mean, where the other thing I've always kind of.
That's probably why you had to work harder to get better and better. I was like, no, this is good enough.
Please love me. Please love me. Oh, like, that's one of the things I always wanted to ask you as well, which I don't think I have, but that there is definitely something you do effects that I don't know anyone else would even attempt, regardless of how, you know, if it would get a great reaction. You have an intensity to go towards something that most people wouldn't even go close to, either because of pain or physical endurance or whatever it is. Like, what I suppose what I'm asking is, like, where does that come from within you, and how much is that has come from stuff in the outside world, inspiration and stuff like that?
I don't know. I just kind of get caught up on the idea of things. So I look at, like you said, read the history, look at things that have been done, and then try to estimate what percentage of that story is true. And then with the assumption that on some instances that this was really done as it was, then you start to rework it and try to think backwards on how to do it. So that's pretty much the methodology on putting things together.
Well, also what's interesting in that is that you said you don't know, you just get hooked on the idea. So the idea is king. It's like regardless of if it's a simple idea or something you're going to do, however you're going to do what you're going to do, if it requires effort, training for 6 months or whatever, the idea is king.
I'm just doing this little Instagram thing. I don't know, it froze. My daughter came in and she did magic. She saw we're live and just cast a spell on it.
She sensed the evil in my heart. Yeah. I think what's interesting about that, what you were saying, was the idea is king. So to you, the idea, regardless of what it takes, regardless of what it is, it's like you get hooked on an idea and that's what you go for.
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite a beautiful thing artistically, I think.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's kind of like, you know, I get this sort of like weird, and then the assumption of, oh, somebody else did it, it can be done by another person. That whole belief system makes it kind of like you keep pushing, and yeah.
I can't imagine anyone would do, and I think that there's an element of where there's a blending of the effect that you do and you as a person, which is always really, really interesting. Do you know what? Also, to change track slightly, I was going to ask you this when we were talking about performers. I thought about it. What is actually your favorite magic show that you've ever seen? Because we talked about performers, but a show's a different thing.
You mean like a live show or a TV? Because I don't watch much TV, so I don't really get. Yeah, live is different. So Ricky Jay and the 52 Assistants, and his 52 Assistants I saw that.
Yep.
Mind blowing. What an incredible show. Aussie show, Concert of the Mind, was one that I was telling you about, where I'd sit in the audience and just become hysterical, going into fits of laughter and just pride to be, you know, connected. Just, you know, wow, this is a guy that's one of us, and look what he's doing. What else was there? Enigma, when I first saw Enigma, you know, Darren's first show. I think it was
Yeah.
his first show, his first big show. When things closed and made the word, that was amazing. And then I think the one show I saw when I was like pretty young, I think I saw the Refrigerator Tour, the Penn and Teller thing. I remember when Teller did that. The first time I saw the rose, you know, it cut and it's bleeding in the shadow. I was like, wow. So yeah, these are things I remember, and there's lots of great stuff. So it's hard to say. You know, you just see things at conventions that are just, you know, mind blowing. I've gone to many conventions very often, but yeah, but when I do, I'm always like, there's always a bunch of kids that are just like surrounded by this enormous crowd doing some insane moves, and then you see these, you know, Jan Frisch type performers just doing some juggling act with magic with red balls, and you're like, wow, you know. So yeah, Danny D'Ortiz live is just a monster anywhere you put him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what's
Juan
interesting?
Tamariz live, just
Right.
you're in hysterical fits the entire time, and on top of that, he's super influential to every single magician and has, I think, the most important. My last show, The Magic Way, I titled after one of his books because he's Juan Tamariz, you know, is obviously Tamariz, just one of the masters of all time.
Well, also, I think what's interesting is I think when people first heard about you potentially doing a live show, most people were, I think, thinking, well, how the heck is that going to translate? You know, you were so used to doing close-up stuff, like street style stuff, that you didn't seem like someone that would even be interested in going into that space. And what I'm interested in is why you.
That's what, by the way, is so impressive about Copperfield is I don't know any performer, almost none. I mean, Madonna or some people like, but he's one of the hardest working people I've ever come across. I mean, so I went to see him at the end of one of his shows, and it was him and Chris, and it was at midnight. They were done. It was Saturday, and Chris kind of circles under his eyes, wiped out. And David's like, "Oh, they're holding the movie for us. We could go to the movie theater and see it." And Chris looks so tired. I was like, "Chris, you look exhausted." It's like, "Yeah, well, we've been here since 10 a.m. We haven't taken a break." I'm like, "What? You've been here since 10? You've worked 14 hours?" It's like, "Yeah, well, we did a bunch of shows." "How many shows?" "Guess how many David did last year?" He says to me. I said, "I don't know, like the average run, 260 shows is what, 5 a week, no weekends. So yeah, about 260. He said, "Guess again." I said, 300. Guess again. 400. Guess again. 500. Guess again. 600. Guess again. I tell me 655 shows he did last year, 3 a days on Saturday, 2 every other day, 1 day off. And I was like, "Well, David, what this is why you do it? It's crazy."
Right.
And he said something to me that's just the exact mentality that everybody should have. He said, "Well, the reason why," and it was coming from magician to magician, talking passionately, it's, you know, and I would assume maybe it's such a good business. And he said, "The reason why is I put a new trick in about 2 years ago. It takes me about 1,000 shows to get that trick right. So I'm starting to get it a little better." And I was like, "Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing." And that's why he, you know, has been the ruler of all, you know, magic entities, businesses since forever, you know.
Did that inspire you? Was that before you started working on your show?
No, that was recently. That was like, yeah, that was like a year ago. No,
Right.
if I did my show like that, I'd be in my funeral.
That's ridiculous.
I'm like, oh man, if I have to do like 40 shows a year, I'm done. So it'll take me like 100 years to get my tricks right.
But I mean, the interesting thing about your stuff on stage was that you still managed to get that sense of true intimacy that you get from close-up. You managed to somehow pull the theater space to you. And that's not you know, instead of projecting out in the same way that most do, I think that's an interesting thing. Like, why did you think that you'd be able to do that?
So when I was trying to put together the show, it was a long process, so it took me years. But what I would start doing is I'd basically start asking every comedian, like Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle and, you know, every comedian I could, the Seinfeld, and I would ask them like Louis C.K., all of those guys. I'd say, what do you do to get your show right? And it was the same answer from all these guys. They were like, play it small, in the middle of nowhere, tweak it, run it, try it, tweak it, run it, try it. And then the last guy asked about that, Aussie, said, this is how I do it. You just insert a little piece, try it, small venues, repetitious, and keep doing it. And eventually you'll start to feel like it's getting okay. So I took that formula, except I kind of like threw it right into the tour. So my first show was the first rehearsal, you know, on stage in front of the audience. So, but anyway, yeah, it was just it was, like I said, you know, I had that team around me that was just a great team, and you know, I was lucky. So eventually I got to tweak it, learn, work, and you know, Aussie came on the road with me the first time, and he was, you know, it was nice to have him there because it was just every night, and Schiffo and Peter Clifford and Paul Keeve and, you know, Roby, all these guys that were on the tours. That, like, afterwards we'd sit there, Kalush would come, we'd review that, and that's what I got from Copperfield. He would review all the shows, make notes, and try to figure out how to make it better. So we did a lot of that, taking notes, review, work, and then the next day try to improve. And each time, never try to make the show good, just always try to make it a little better each time, because better doesn't have a ceiling. You can always keep trying to be better.
Right. That's a good thing. Better doesn't have a ceiling. I like that. Well, you know what's interesting? I was thinking about that as you were talking about all these little improvements, incremental things. You and I once had a very weird, okay, aside from the motorbike, but we were, when the eclipse was going on in New York, we were on the top of your apartment.
I remember that. Yeah.
When the eclipse came in, and you were doing some magic, and some lady fell over in the middle of it, I think as some kind of heckle. I don't know what was happening. But I remember talking to you on this rooftop in New York, eclipse is happening, so all the light was bizarre. And it's like weird magical feeling, literally in the air. And I remember like we were coming away, and these people had reacted, obviously, and you just said to me, I was talking to you about something to do with reactions, and you just said, psychology is everything, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But it was the way in which you were just saying, yes, psychology. You just said psychology is everything. I always remember you saying that.
As a performer, especially. I mean, and that's, and there's, you know, and there is a big difference between close up and stage, because close up is you're right here, stage is you have to do the exact same thing but out. So, but once you get that little click, once you get that switch, stage is pretty amazing. Like it's hard to say like close up is, they're both like, close up is also amazing, but stage is like boom, you know. So it's hard to, they're both amazing. The nice thing about close up is it's anywhere, anytime, everywhere, all the time. But stage is like this enormous impact, and when it works you really feel it. When it's bad, you really feel bad. Close up, when it's great, you're kind of happy. And when it sucks, it's not too bad. It's bad, but you know. right. The extremes are different, right? And also, like when you get that love from a crowd on stage, it's like a wall that hits you in a way that you're never going to get that in close up. You might get some loud reactions, but when you're on a stage and you have hundreds or thousands of people react, that's got to feel nice. Nice to know that you can affect, you know, a room is always a nice thing. Yeah. But the show is a work in progress, and I keep trying to figure out how to make it better and better and better. That's the goal. So eventually I'll hopefully get it right at one point. It'll never be right, but hopefully it'll be more on the right path.
But what I think is interesting about it is that, like you said, it's a work in progress, but you're still managing to get elements of that intimacy and that close-up feel, even though it is projecting out to a stage. And it's interesting to watch that byplay between that. And so to me, again, the idea of psychology being everything is a continual thinking about what an audience is thinking, where they're at emotionally, where they're at the
And I think the other thing is you never want to underestimate your audience. So it's like a lot of, you know, and I think that's my problem with illusions is it's kind of like you're tricking it. Whereas I feel like there's like a balancing point, because I don't want to just show them a bunch of like tricks. I want them to know that like I'm really putting everything I have into this show. So part of that was like putting all these things into the show and then contextualizing it under a sort of magic umbrella, but letting them feel that like this is a show that when my crew and team watch the show, they're all on their tippy toes watching the thing on the edge of their seat and can't watch some parts. So it is one of those shows that like, you know, something can go wrong and it might go wrong and it probably will go wrong, but let's try to make it not go wrong the best that we can, you know.
That's great. And I think that because I saw it down in my neck of the woods when you came down here, and I think which I think was the first time I showed you that thing with the ring. And what was your first impression of one, as in one Tamariz?
Well, I mean, I had already read and heard every story about him and studied him and was so impressed with him. So it's just, I was kind of ready for him to be as amazing as he is. And it was in a small group at a convention, just watching him just and his thinking and, you know, just his process and then also just his magnetic way with all this room full of magicians. I was obviously one of those people that was just blown away by the master.
So also someone's also, I mean, actually that's a bit of a boring question. Let's have a look.
Somebody asked about exposure of magic on YouTube, and I think all that stuff is, everything is good, because if things are exposed, you have to either do things that are, the exposure is actually just as impressive as the trick that they're seeing, number one, or you have to just keep reinventing. So all that stuff is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Also, someone's just said, are you ever taking the tour to Europe?
Well, I did a little bit. I went through Scotland, Ireland, and, you know, the UK, and, you know, did London, the Hammersmith. So I did a little bit, but eventually I'll probably do another show or something.
Yes, the people asking about all different. Here we go. Someone said about your daughter getting into the business when she's older, because she was doing effects on your latest special, right?
Yeah, she's amazing. But I mean, she just does it for fun. You know, she'll do whatever her path is, and whatever she does, I'll be so proud of her. If she does decide to get into magic, I'll probably be super nervous. What if she starts doing these other things? Oh no. So, you know, but anyway, I'm sure whatever she does will be amazing.
Someone's just asked another one, which is what's your record for the breath holding? Which I don't know. Was it 17? No.
Well, that was what I did live on Oprah, the 1704, but my actual record was 20 minutes and 2 seconds, which ironically is, if you watch the TED Talk that I did, it's exactly timed out to 20:02. So the version that they put together, not including the lead-in thing in the end, is the exact amount of time that I held my breath, with doctors and scientists around and pulmonary experts and telemetry on me. Heart rate dropped to 8 beats per minute.
Wow. Okay, let's look at this. Do you know what I'll do is, because I know that you've got to go. You have some bits and pieces to do, but I think I'm going to end with a question from myself.
Great.
And I suppose it's about trust. I wonder, with all the decisions that you've made, where it comes down to the show, a lot of the things that you've done, I wonder how you, as a performer, you end up trusting yourself. A lot of people are terrified of making the wrong decisions or missteps. I'm always interested in the fact that as a performer and a person, you seem to be able to trust yourself to make certain decisions.
That's a really good question. What I feel, that what I've noticed for myself at least, is it's all about baby steps. So if you're taking a little tiny step, you start to build a little bit of trust. Another little step, build a little more trust. Take another step, fall, fail, get back up, pick up the pieces, take a few steps backwards, and then start again. A little trust, a little further, a little trust, maybe this time a little further. You know, getting over the 6-minute hurdle on the breath holding, it was like at 5:59, I just couldn't cross the 6 minutes. And I kept blacking out underwater before it, over and over and over. I have 20 blackout videos. Then all of a sudden, backwards, and then boom, you know, jumped right over it, hurdled over it. So I think it's trust. Even getting on stage, everything is baby steps. So surround yourself with the best people that inspire you. do your due diligence, read, study the subject, study what you're trying to do. If it's something that's, you know, pushing boundaries, very slow, very careful. And when it feels like too much, it probably is. So you can feel, you know, your instinct, I think, is good. And that is, the trust is your instinct. You have a pretty fair instinct that you've built up most of your life, I think, for me at least.
Well, you know, that's a great answer. I don't want to keep you too much longer, as I know you have to go. But all I will say is that, you know, thank you so much for coming on here, being so open and honest with your answers. You're meant to a lot of things to a lot of people at this time. So, you know, thank you so much. Is there anything you want to say to everyone while you're here?
No, just thank you. Can you do the ring thing? Can you show us?
I knew you were going to ask that. I don't think there's a time I've seen you where you haven't asked me to do that. Oh.
I just love this thing. It looks so good. It's one of my favorite sleight of hand things. Yeah,
just look where there's no exposure. So look, all it is with
so
the ring.
Good. Oh, it's so good. It looks amazing. Yeah, that looks so good.
Oh.
That looks amazing. Should I show you my version of it? Should I show you here? But I don't know if it's right because I haven't. You probably worked on the angle or something. So hold on. Can you? No, I have to tilt it down more, right?
There we go.
Hold
yeah.
on. Okay. All right, can you see it from there?
Yeah.
Can you see?
Yep.
Yeah. How's it? Oh, did I flash it a little bit?
That's looking good.
Here, no. There. Hold on. Wait. It's just hard with the angle. Oh yeah, there. Hold on.
It's looking good, dude. Do you know what? I remember the first time.
Work in progress.
It was in Bournemouth, and you were just screaming and trying to film it. I remember.
It's so good.
It's fun. It's fun, man. Well, look. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
I'll keep practicing it. Next time I see you, it'll be better.
Right, yeah, I'm just a little better, right? Each time. That's right.
All right, thank you, man. Thank you, Ben.
All right, no worries.
Bye.
Speak soon.
Take care. Bye.